Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the TWSN Soccer Sitdown show. I'm Joe McNamara and Christian Black. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, man. I'm excited to talk some Euros.
Yeah, completely agree. We have a couple massive games, some really big matchups with the best players. Obviously, we've seen. Starting off today with two games, but we'll break it all down for you.
That's right. And I get to miss him because I got to work at Lowe's today. So shout out Lowe's. Yeah, so we're gonna start off with who's playing today first. I believe
Wales,
Wales
Denmark.
and Denmark. So we'll start there. Who do we think is going to come out on top there? I mean, Wales has been kind of a underdog for some people. They've really came out of nowhere. Some people. Denmark. I mean, we already know what their story is with Christian Eriksen and everything, and how they were able to sneak into the knockout round. So I'll start with you, Max. What are your thoughts for this game today?
I mean, it's going to be a really closely competitive one. Like you said, Wales have been kind of an underdog. People underestimated their chances of, possibly making out of the group prior to the tournament. But we saw, like in their last Euros appearance, they're a team that's willing to that can shock the world from time to time. And I think they're going to give Denmark a run for their money. But I do think Denmark is favored in this game for a reason. I think even without their best player, Christian Eriksen, and thank God that he's now discharged from the hospital and he's doing all right, they're still a formidable side. And I think, ironically enough, even with the loss of Eriksen, because of everything that happened, that might motivate them to try to make it far and possibly win this tournament in his honor. So I'm going to lean Denmark here for that reason. Also, I just think they're a better overall side. I think the way they play their games, they're a little bit more I would say they're both kind of lean towards being more counterattacking sides, but I would say in this game, I expect Denmark to have more of the ball. And I think at the end of the day, despite it being closely competitive, I think it could be like a 2-1-ish like score line in favor of Denmark today.
Yeah, I think once again, I completely agree with Max. I think it's going to be, it's not going to be a high-scoring game, I don't think. I think it's going to be, the difference between maybe a guy taking his chance versus somebody not. And I think the reason why I'm going to lean Denmark is their final group game. That was a fantastic performance. And Wales, like Joe mentioned, have been a gritty team. They showed it at the last Euros. This is a team that's going to come out there and give it all they got. So I'm not going to come out and say Denmark's going to come out and win by a score of 2-0 or something like that. But, the difference between Denmark and Wales is, it's a very well-rounded team. You have the likes of Pierre-Emerick Højbjerg and Yusuf Poulsen, Kasper Schmeichel. Like, the list goes on. That's a very good team. Yeah. And, going into this tournament, many thought, this could be a team that, makes a deep run with Christian Eriksen. And, it's sad to see that he's not going to be able to, impact on for his team and his country. But this team besides him is still very good. And, I'm not going to come out and say they're going to, not only win today, but potentially win more games, because that would be a tough route to see. But then again, their next matchup would be either against the Netherlands or the Czech Republic, which, the Netherlands have looked very good. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. But I think, if a guy like Gareth Bale can come up with the performance, that's certainly possible. Aaron Ramsey has looked very good in this tournament so far, which we haven't seen in a while. You have the likes of Dan James, which, he can provide pace, but that's about it. But maybe he provides, he can provide something potentially. We haven't really seen it, though, on any level over the last, year or two. But, there is dangerous players in this side from Wales. It's just a determination of whether or not they can provide that, spark in the game. And I think, Denmark has it in terms of defensively. Look at the goal Christensen scored.
It's incredible.
We've never seen that before for Chelsea. But he comes up with a fantastic goal. I think, just the storyline with how Denmark has shown over the last couple games, the fight they've shown is incredible. And I think, they'll win something like 2-1 today, but I could certainly see Wales doing it. It's going to be very close, and it'll probably come down to that last 15 minutes or so.
And can I add to that really quickly, Joe? I think the one player that I think the pressure has to be on is Gareth Bale. I think when he's at his best, he's the best player on the pitch today. In general, I think between the two sides. And I think that if he turns up, he could win this game for Wales. He's been playing well in terms of distributing the ball to Aaron Ramsey. We saw that lead up to that one goal the last game they played. But as we saw also with his penalty attempt, he hasn't really had an eye for goal this tournament. And I think that if he can score and continue to create, if he can have a major impact in this game, he can single-handedly win this game for Wales. He's the best player on the pitch today. So I think the pressure is on Gareth Bale, and it's up to him to see if he can live up to it.
Yeah, I actually am going to go Wales in this game. I really do think they're a little bit more of a clinical team, and I think Gareth Bale's gonna go off today. I really think he's really on form. We saw him pick up form as the season ended with Tottenham. We saw what he did, and I believe it was the second group stage game against who was it against?
It was against Turkey.
Turkey, yeah. I mean, I think he's just on great form right now, and when Bale's on form, he's still a top 10 player in the world on form, in my opinion. Like, he could just do a lot of things that other players can't do, whether it be thread a through ball through an insanely tight window or just score at an absolute worldie. So that's the reason I think I'm going to go with Wales in this team. And I also think they just have they're a little bit more clinical than Denmark can be. Denmark's a good team, but I mean, they're relying on Højbjerg right now to do a lot of their not finishing, but a lot of their distribution. And Højbjerg is a great player, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I mean, I see him more as a DM, although he's probably more of a regular center mid. But he's a great player, but I don't think he can really get it done all on his own. I think there's a little bit – I don't know. I just don't really trust Denmark too much here. I think I kind of hope they win because I really love the story, how they're all rallying together after the Christian Eriksen incident. And thank God that Eriksen's doing better now. I believe he got discharged from the hospital the other day. So thank God on that. But I just think Wales is going to advance in this one. And I think it can be by a score of 3-1. I think they're going to get 3, and I think Denmark's going to get 1. And I think Denmark might get the first one too. But moving on, let's move on to I believe it's Italy-Austria game that I very much wish I was watching today, but unfortunately I will not be able to. So let's go with you, Max. Who do you think is going to win this game?
I have to take Italy here. They haven't proven to me otherwise that they can't go out and possibly dominate a team like Austria. I think Austria can possibly get on the score sheet today. As we know, Italy and England are the only two teams that have not conceded a single goal in the entire group stage in the entire tournament, obviously. But I just think, Austria has a lot of, maybe under the radar guys that are good at they're pretty clinical in front of goal. And I don't know. I trust that they're good enough to possibly get a consolation goal here, but I think it will be a consolation goal. I expect Italy to dominate this game from the beginning and show the world why they should be considered possible favorites for this tournament.
Yeah, I think there's no way you can pick against Italy as far as we've seen so far. Even in the third group game, they ended up rotating a lot. We got to see Marco Verratti. There was a lot of other players that rotated in, and they still played well. So, Italy is. I mean, we've sang their praises throughout the last couple of weeks. This is a dark horse. It's clear, and maybe they shouldn't even be considered a dark horse at this point. That's just, that's how good they've been so far. And I think, like Max mentioned, the problem with, Austria's team is, their best player is David Alaba. And, he's playing in a position where it's very difficult to impact the game to a point where you can, put your team on your back, basically. He's playing either left back or maybe even left wing back. They've used him in a couple different areas. And, while he's, still a very good defender and he's played in a lot of different positions for Bayern, it's like I mentioned, he can't really impact the game to the point where he's going to be able to do enough to get Italy or to really frustrate Italy. And I think, they'll be very reliant on a guy like Marko Arnautovic who, hasn't played at the highest level in club football over the last 2 years. Ever since he left West Ham, you're relying on a guy like Marcel Sabitzer from RB Leipzig, who
he to me can impact this game completely.
He's great, man.
He's a great player. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, he's a guy who plays, as more of an 8 and a 6, more of a, an attacking midfielder almost for RB Leipzig. He's more farther forward for Austria, and they need him to be that way. And I think, if there is one guy who could impact the game to the point where this is really interesting down the last 10, 15 minutes, I think it's going to be Sabitzer. But they have, really good play. I mean, they have a guy like Konrad Leimer who also plays at RB Leipzig. So there's quality in this Austrian team, but I mean, we have to talk about Italy as a team that, could potentially make that run to a semifinal or final. I mean, the one question mark is that striker position once again. and their forward line, can they get that finishing? It may not be something that, is questioned in this game, because I think they will, find a way to score 2 or 3 goals today. But, against better opposition, I think it's going to be the bigger question mark with Ciro Immobile and whether or not he can be that clear-cut finisher that gets this team to a final. But today, I think they'll cruise to a win. I think Austria is a very good side, but not a side that can really frustrate Italy to the point where it's very interesting. So I have 2-0 to Italy today.
See, I'm a little nervous about this game. Maybe it's because I can't watch it. Maybe it's just nervousness in general, getting butterflies. But I have a bad feeling for it. And I think part of the reason is I don't know how Italy's going to score. I mean, we saw against Switzerland, they got 2 goals from a DM. I mean, the scoring from Italy is there, but it's not consistent, if that makes sense. You have some games where it's Insigne, it's Ciro Immobile, and you have other games where it's Locatelli. It's just I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, I think Verratti being back is huge because he's a great player. We all know this. Plays great with PSG, but I don't know. Italy should win this game. They should control how they've controlled every other game, control possession to smaller teams. I mean, again, I didn't see the last game at Wales. I was at Lowe's, so I don't really know how that totally went. But I know with Switzerland and Turkey, they just smothered possession the entire time and didn't really allow these other teams to get going. So I feel like if they could do that again against Austria, they'll be fine. I don't really trust Austria on the counter. So, I mean, Sabitzer's a great player. I would love him at Spurs, but I don't know if he's going to be able to – he's that guy on the counter attack who's going to be able to score a bunch of goals like that. That's what they need, and I don't know if Austria has that. And I think that's going to be – if Italy wins, I think that's going to be the deciding factor of the game. Italy smothering possession and not allowing much on the counter.
And just one thing, I mean, we saw in Austria's group, I mean, they looked, decent against North Macedonia, and, they were another cool story, but that was, not a great team. And I mean, Ukraine was solid, but they only managed to win 1-0. And the opponent, their best opponent was Netherlands, and they went and lost 2-0. It wasn't a very good performance. So maybe that's, a tale of what's going to happen today. I mean, Netherlands and Italy play very different styles, and they really don't have the same, tactical setup in terms of Frank de Boer and Roberto Mancini. But I think, Joe's a little nervous. I would be a little more confident in Italy today, but you could certainly see Austria frustrate them and make it a little interesting. But I just see Italy being very comfortable today.
Hope you're right, man. Hope you're right. But moving on to Christian's team, the Dutch, otherwise known as the Netherlands or Holland. Multiple names for one country. Isn't it beautiful? Anyway, they take on the Czech Republic today. And Christian, I'll start with you because this is your team. Who do you think is going to come out on top here, and why?
Yeah, so going into this tournament, I mean, I've questioned a lot of Frank de Boer. I think that's rightfully criticism, considering his managerial career at club football level. But credit to him. I mean, Netherlands have looked very good in this tournament so far. I mean, their group games. I mean, like we just mentioned with Austria. I mean, not the greatest group, but they've looked very comfortable. Memphis Depay is playing at his best level probably ever, and he just earned his move to Barcelona. So credit to him. I mean, the absence of Virgil van Dijk will certainly hurt in a game like this, because the Czech Republic are once again one of those gritty teams, like we mentioned with Wales, that are really going to frustrate you. They have a lot of quality players and guys like Patrick Schick, who probably has the goal of the tournament so far. You have Thomas Souček, who's been great with West Ham. You have Soufal on the right at the right back position. So they have a very good mix of gritty players and guys who are going to really have a really good work rate. But I think the major question is the domination in the midfield. We mentioned Souček. You have a guy like Dorita, who I believe plays at Hertha Berlin in Germany. How can a guy like Gini Wijnaldum and a guy like Frankie de Jong, can they really impact the game and really frustrate? I see them, really being a dominant force in this game, and I think that's going to be the major key for the Netherlands winning this game, because you have two of those guys. We'll see where De Boer goes in terms of that third midfielder, because that'll be interesting. You have a guy like De Roon, who played the first 2 group games from Atalanta, but I think a guy like Ryman Gravenberg would be a great addition to this lineup today. I think he's been a youngster at Ajax, and he's really going to be a guy who could be dominant across Europe for the next decade or so. He's a great youngster, and I think having him in that game would be huge for this team. But I think, like I mentioned, you have a guy like Depay, and I think Weghorst from Wolfsburg could also be an impact player up front with him. So I think, the guys like Souček and Patrick Schick, those guys could really impact this game. But I think we've seen enough from Netherlands in the first 3 group games to show that they, are better under Frank de Boer than we probably expected going into the tournament. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be 2-1 Netherlands, but certainly, Czech Republic are a dangerous team, and they've shown it in the group.
I agree with what Christian was saying with regard to the Czech Republic, being kind of one of these teams that can challenge a team like the Netherlands, because I'll be honest with you, the Netherlands have been relatively untested this tournament, with the exception of that first game, and a lot of it was that Matthias de Ligt was not on the pitch, and defensively that led them to concede 2 goals. And then since then, I don't think they've conceded a single goal since de Ligt has been back in the lineup. So that's a huge X factor for me, playing that back 3 with, Denzel Dumfries out wide, for example, as a wing back. And they have Van Aanholt, who I believe plays at Crystal Palace, out there on the left. So, that back 3, I guess the back 5 with, I guess it's Blind, De Vrij, and Matthias de Ligt. And then you have the 2 wing backs can really help them keep a pretty solid defensive shape. And we've seen the impact Dumfries has had in the final third of this tournament. Him and Gosens have been the best fullbacks of the tournament. And I expect them to go to pretty big clubs after this tournament, obviously, because of that. But again, I think at the end of the day, the Netherlands are a better team. I think they will win this game, but I don't think we're going to be ultimately that impressed with them, because I'm not sold on Frank de Boer as a tactical master. I think he's proven that he can get outclassed by most managers in this tournament, even though his team has looked dominant. I don't know if it's because of his tactics. I think it's more so because of just the quality on the field. And that's why I think once they play a big team, they're going to be the first of the major guys to fall, because I don't think they're good enough to make it far into this tournament unless they get easy draws, which looks like they're kind of on track to get. But I think they're a relatively untested side. I don't think they're going to get tested too much today, so I'm going to take Netherlands.
I feel the same way. I think the Czech Republic's a good team, but I think there's just too much talent on the side of the Dutch. And I think Depay has been great. I think he and Weghorst I think they're going to be starting next to each other today. And I think that's going to be big for them. I think they're going to have Weghorst play more of a target man and then have Depay running behind, kind of. And then I think they'll just dominate the Czech doing that. But, I mean, overall, I kind of agree with you, Max. I don't really see this Netherlands team going that far. I don't know how they are too much tactically. I think de Ligt is a great player, but overall, at some point, they're going to be playing these teams who have very good offenses and have a stronger defense. And I think that'll be the turning point for the Netherlands in the tournament. And I think that'll be what ends up being their downfall. And Christian, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue to go back to it. It's the questioning of Frank de Boer. And I think, you have him as a manager who gets questioned. You have Gareth Southgate, who we can talk about later, is questioned pretty heavily. There's a lot of managers in this tournament that are going to get tested. And I agree with Max completely. Netherlands are not going to get tested today. Maybe this will be a better test than some of their group games, but it's not going to be a test to the point where we can really look at this team as a team that could potentially get to the final. I don't see that happening. They would potentially play Wales or Denmark if to win today. That's not a huge test, but we'll see what happens. Or in terms, they actually play tomorrow. But I mean, I'm not confident in this Netherlands team either. I think it's purely off the fact that they have a lot of quality throughout the team in terms of their defense, the midfield, and even the front line. I think all 3 of those areas are strong, and that's even without Virgil van Dijk and Donny van de Beek, who have been 2 important players for this team over the last handful of years. So once again, I agree. I think they'll win today, but not a test, and it's not going to show that this team is going to make a final.
Yeah, and then moving on to the second game tomorrow, which is arguably the best game of the group stages. Not the group stages, the round of 16. Belgium versus Portugal. This is going to be an interesting game, and I bet you we're all going to have different predictions for this. We'll start with you, Max. Who do you got winning this game and why?
After much debate, I finally settled on Portugal. I'm going to take Portugal to win this game because I'll explain. The thing with Belgium is they've looked great. Obviously, they won the first game against Russia convincingly without Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne comes in against Denmark after they're down 1-0, and then he goes, creates an assist, and then scores the winning goal. What would be the winning goal to win 2-1. And we've just seen his impact in this tournament in just a very limited time, which I think proves to everyone why he's indeed the best midfielder in the world. So that combination of the best midfielder in the world and a definitive top 5 striker in the world in Romelu Lukaku is going to be dangerous for any side. But you know what's not very dangerous? That Belgium backline. I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with you. And I think if this was the 2018 World Cup, I would have had a different take. I think their backline was incredibly solid, but I think both Vertonghen and Alderweireld and other people they've had in that backline, they've just gotten worse with age, naturally so. And I just think that going against an attacking prowess like Portugal, which I know they've been kind of rocky, but I think that game against France showed you Portugal at their best. And I think we could debate whether or not France deserved that first penalty, which ultimately caused the draw. But even if you are in favor of that decision, there's no doubting that Portugal looked impressive, especially in that first half. They dominated France. They absolutely dominated France in all facets of the game. And France is supposed to be the best team in the world. Maybe not on paper, maybe not ranked, but we all know that France is probably the best team in the world. The way that they were able to dominate possession and create countless chances on them proves to me why Portugal are, in my opinion, the most talented team in the world. Now it's just a matter of how can that backline, will that backline be able to sustain that attack of Lukaku and De Bruyne? I understand there's a lot of question marks, but honestly, I assume Belgium will get on the score sheet in this game. But if Portugal can replicate what they did in the first half against France, which is dominate possession, create chances, we know how good their attack is. I'm going to call out one player. I'm going to call out Bruno Fernandes. I think Bruno Fernandes needs to wake up from whatever rock he's been under because he has not shown up this tournament. And I think if he comes and impacts this game like we know he can really decide this game. And I expect Ronaldo to get on the score sheet. I think he's just going to add to his already insane goal total. He's scored 5 goals in 3 games. It's ridiculous. And yes, I know people are going to talk about the fact that he scored 2 penalties against France. Okay, but he's still, an incredible player, and he just tied the record for most goals scored by an international male player of all time. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we're talking about the sport of soccer here. So I'm going to take Portugal because I think at their best, which I don't know if we've quite seen them at their best. I think maybe, like I said, that first half against France was the closest thing we've seen to their best. I think them at their best can beat any team in the world. And even though Belgium have looked more impressive overall, I just think Portugal will have a better overall team. And I think Portugal are going to be ready and determined to get that rematch against France, because if I'm correct, the bracket shows that if Portugal that would be in the semifinals. And I think they would be determined to get to the semifinals to play France again, to prove to the world that they can beat France. So I think that might be what drives them forward. And maybe it's not a popular pick, but I'm going to take Portugal to upset Belgium.
Yeah, I'm going with the same pick. I think, in terms of what Belgium was looking for, I actually think had they played Germany and Germany finished third, I actually probably would have taken Belgium. I think that's probably more inclined on the fact that Germany doesn't have an out-and-out goal scorer. And, while Belgium has their defensive deficiencies, Germany doesn't have an out-and-out guy who would really damage those defenders. So I think that's probably why I would have, in terms of from a Belgian perspective, you'd rather have Germany. But I'll take it one step farther with Max. I think Bruno Fernandes, if he can get to a level he's shown at Manchester United, I think they are a lock to go to the semifinal and go play France. I think they'll get past Italy if Bruno Fernandes gets going. I think that's maybe an unpopular pick, and Joe probably is shaking his head as an Italy fan, but that's how impressive Bruno can be if he's playing well. But he just needs to be checked up upon because, like Max mentioned, he's kind of been under a rock throughout this tournament. He's been, he hasn't impacted the game. He's been there, but he's not really done anything to really, put his mark on the game. And I think that's the question mark with Portugal, not just tomorrow, but just in general going forward in this tournament. Because if he's not playing at his high level, you're not going to take him out. But at some point, they need to figure out how to get him playing back to his best. But like you mentioned, I mean, Belgium has the quality to get it done in terms of their attack. I think Lukaku could get on the score sheet. I'm sure De Bruyne will impact the game. Can Eden Hazard start and, play 90 minutes and impact the game at a level he's shown at Chelsea, not at Real Madrid? I'm not too sure. But when you have the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, Diego Jota, and Bernardo Silva as a front three, I think those three are more trusted to do, something throughout the game versus Lukaku, De Bruyne, and Hazard. And I think Hazard's the one question mark because we know, De Bruyne, like Max mentioned, even in his spurts of minutes with that injury he came back from, he's been great and he's going to impact this game. The major question mark is Hazard and that defense, which when you have Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, and I think Denier is the other center back they've been playing. He made the error on the Yusuf Poulsen goal in the Denmark game, remember, on that pass in the back. So I think, it's going to be tight, but I just trust, Ronaldo and the likes of the rest of their attack to get the job done. Once again, and I think we'll continue to watch what they do as in terms of their midfield because I think Renato Sanchez is a guy that should be starting, but they continue to go to Danilo Pereira. And
he started against France, and look how well he played. He has to start.
And I think, at his age, he's a guy who can really impact the game. He's shown it in spurts at Lille. I don't think he played a ton of minutes. I think it was 23 games, which isn't, too much for a team. But he was part of a title-winning Lille team that overhauled PSG. So I think a guy like Renato Sanchez should start. Whether he takes a spot away from Danilo Pereira or William Carvalho, who are, two trusted center defensive mids, I wonder. But I think Portugal gets it done. I think 3-1, but Lukaku gets on the score sheet.
So for me, I think we need to have a conversation about Bruno Fernandes. Where has this guy ever been in big games? Like, even if we look at Manchester United, he doesn't show up in big games at all. He gets a pen, and his stats look better.
He didn't even show up to the cup final against Villarreal.
That's what I'm saying. Like, when does he show up? When they lost 6-1 to Tottenham, what did he do? He got a pen. When they play City, what does he do? Not much. When they play Arsenal, what does he do? Nothing, and that's Arsenal.
Oh, Arsenal. I don't know if that's a big game.
Yeah. I don't know if Jake's in this show, but he's not going to like that one. He might be getting a text in a little bit, Christian. But yeah, I don't think this guy is a very serious player. I think he might be a little overrated, if I may. Yeah. I think it's time to have a conversation.
I think he's a class player, but he just, like you said, he disappears when it matters most, and that's a big problem.
Most of his goals are like on penalties.
Yeah, I'd love to look at the numbers, and we should probably do that after the show because it's probably staggering how many of those. I think he's still a very good player. I'm not going to
good player, but they're like saying like
I wouldn't put him in as I would take Kevin De Bruyne over him. There's definitely tens I would take over him. But he's still like I don't know if I'd put him at world class, but he's a very good 10.
Yeah.
Listen, to me, he's shown that he's a top 10 player in the world when he's at his best. But the thing is, to be in that conversation, you have to show up when it matters. How do you evaporate from the pitch against Villarreal? This is a 7th place Spanish club. They should not have made it to the European Cup final. And this is United, who's supposed to be the second best team in England, and he did nothing. He's supposed to be the best player on there. So I don't know. I think at his peak, he's a top 10 player, but he needs to show that consistency. But look, he'll destroy this conversation if he shows up against Belgium, because that is going to be arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest game of his career. So
I agree with that. And I would like to say this though. Cristiano Ronaldo is inevitable. He's just inevitable. He's going to get a goal. I don't care if it's a penalty. I don't care how it is. He's going to get his goal. And because of that, that's why I'm going to take Portugal in this game. I think they are a good team. And I think Ronaldo feasts on that bad back line of Belgium. I think that's the difference maker in this game. I really do. I think Belgium's a great team, but I think overall, I'll take the Ruben Diaz back line versus the Toby Alderweireld back line. So, and here's Jake, not happy with that Arsenal slander, eh?
I apologize, but one thing, and I just pulled up his numbers at United. 13 of his 26 goals have come from the penalty spot in 2 seasons. 13 of 26, just so you know. So
he's not real. He's not real. If my math is correct, and I'm a terrible person at math, that means half the goals he scored are penalties.
Take what you want from that, I guess.
Yeah, it's time we start a dialogue. But Moving on now, I will, 1 second. Let me get to Tuesday's games. England versus Germany, starting off. I know who I'm picking in this game, and I'm not going to have to wear an Arsenal jersey after this game. I'll tell you that right now. Max, I'll start with you. Who do you think is winning this game?
I think we're kind of on the same wavelength here. I'm going to take Germany to win this game, and I think it's solely on the manager. I think Gareth Southgate's going to overthink this game. I think he may end up even reverting back to a back five, which honestly may not be the worst move on paper, but I just think considering that England's shape has been that 4-2-3-1 with the two holding midfielders, I don't know if going to a back five would really make a lot of sense in terms of tactical consistency. And I think he has shown over time that while he can beat the smaller teams, when he goes against real teams, he just doesn't really show up. And even in that World Cup, I don't even know if they didn't beat any big team in the 2018 World Cup. And the only time they came against a real team was Croatia, and they lost that game. So until they can go on and beat one of these major countries, I'm going to take Germany. And I think the way that even though they have looked pretty shaky this tournament, obviously one could argue that, they should have lost to Hungary. We know that they didn't play very well against France in that loss. They showed their quality to the world against Portugal, and they beat them 4-1. And I think if they could beat Portugal 4-1, why can't they do the same to England? So maybe they won't beat them 4-1, but I do think that they have the quality to go on and make a statement and beat England.
Oof. I think I'm going to lean England. And, maybe that's an unpopular pick. But I didn't love what I saw against Hungary from Germany. And Hungary were, a very stingy defense throughout their group games. We saw that against France. We saw it against Germany. They were a team that, and even Portugal, they really frustrated Portugal for 70, 80 minutes. And then Portugal got their 3 goals. But Hungary were, very stingy. But Germany looked very flat. They just snuck by. They were on the verge of, not only not finishing in the top 2, but finishing in 4th and being eliminated. So, I think that the questions for Southgate are certainly, rightfully so, deservedly. But Joachim Low should be questioned as well. It is last tournament, but the team selection continues to be, the question. Will he start Timo Werner? I doubt it. I think he's going to continue to go with a front 3 of either Serge Gnabry, Kai Havertz, and either Thomas Muller or Leroy Sané. I would assume Muller, but Leroy Sané did start that final group game. And then, once again, the question mark is, where is Grealish going to play? Will Grealish even play over a guy like Mason Mount? I'm not too sure because Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell were out of their last game with COVID, with contact tracing to Billy Gilmore, who had it in their second group game against Scotland. So I think, once again, when we get up to this game on Tuesday, where is Grealish going to play? And that's if he plays, because I think he's an X factor for this team because, in the final group game, he was the one that assisted Raheem Sterling's header. To credit Raheem Sterling, I think he's looked, much better this tournament than he showed at Manchester City, which Max would know throughout the league campaign. I think he's been much more dangerous. And I would like to see Jadon Sancho, but unfortunately, we didn't see him once in the group games. I don't expect to see him here. And I think, probably Phil Foden comes back in for Bukayo Saka, who was pretty good in the game as well.
I think Bukayo Saka has to start. I think Jack Grealish and Bukayo Saka have to start, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and Jake, that's an Arsenal positive comment over here.
I'm going to make it unpositive real quick, though. England's relying on an Arsenal 19-year-old to go forward in the Euros. This is not good. You never want to rely on an Arsenal player.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to come on Arsenal again. I had one comment, that was it. But Bukayo Saka has, and Jake and Joe, who would know, he's looked very good this season for Arsenal. I think that's not saying too much because they don't have much attacking quality. I would take another shot, but Bukayo Saka was very dangerous in that game against Czech Republic. He was, going down the wings. He was providing his pace, even some, involvement in the final third. That is true. Okay, but it's important to mention that he was very effective in that game against Czech Republic. Will Phil Foden start? I believe he will come back in, but they still have the attack quality. Once again, is Harry Kane? I think Grealish is a guy who will provide the chances for Kane to get the goals that he needs, and I think it's going to be a close game. I trust, the guys like Jack Grealish to involve in the game. I think if Jack Grealish starts this game, Germany involves themselves to the point where they aren't going to have enough to win this game. I think Grealish is that guy who can impact the game to the point where England gets through. If it's Mason Mount, not as confident. That's how I feel about it. I think that number 10 position is so important. And like Max mentioned, if they go to a 5 and back, I can't imagine why they would do that. I think sticking with the 4-2-3-1 with Harry Kane up there on his own is the most important way for this team to win. And I don't trust Germany to get the goals to win this game. So
they're gonna go to a 5 in the back. They're gonna go to a 5.
I assume they will. But I'm a little more optimistic and hopeful that they will stick with the 4-2-3-1. And if they do, I think they'll win 2-1. If they go with the 5 back, though, I agree with both of you. I think Germany wins.
Can I tell you how I think this game is going to go? Like in real time, I think it's going to be similar to that semifinal game. And I think, England's going to get an early goal. And I think everyone's going to start losing their minds and saying it's coming home. And then Germany's going to show their quality and win 3-1. That's how I think the game is going to go, to be honest with you.
I can see that. But going off what Jake says, Southgate is not a serious coach. He's not. He's going to play 5 in the back. If Mount is able to play, Mount's going to be playing at the 10. He's going to go back to Sterling and Foden on the wings. And that's what's going to happen. I promise you that's what's going to happen. They're going to have no service for Kane. Foden and Sterling are not clinical players. They're just not. Sterling, I've been wrong about him this tournament. He's played well, but let's be honest, he's not a clinical player. This is the same team that drew 0-0 to Scotland. Okay? They're not a serious team, and I think Germany is going to beat them 2-0, actually. I don't think that England's going to get a goal if they don't play Jackie Grealish or Saka. They need someone creative there. I don't know why.
I think they're 100% playing Jack Grealish. You don't think so?
Southgate doesn't like him.
I wonder with the health of Mason.
Southgate doesn't rate him.
He's just been too good these games, though. The games that he's been playing, you saw that assist to Sterling. I'll be the first one to admit that he's not a clinical player, but that wasn't even Sterling being clinical. It was Grealish delivering a great ball into Sterling and him scoring that header. I think Grealish I think Gareth Southgate is literally writing his own. I guess he's just putting his name on paper to be fired if he doesn't start Jack Grealish. He has to start Jack Grealish. There's no question there, in my opinion. But I wouldn't be surprised, like Joe mentioned, if he overthinks it and he just decides not to. But he has to.
It's not even overthinking it. He's just not a good coach. He's just not a good coach. 5 in the back. No clear 10. They're playing Mason Mount as a 10. I don't really understand his tactics at all. I mean, there's a reason they didn't win the Cup in 2018. World Cup, I should say. There's a reason that this team is stacked on paper, yet they're consistently underperforming. And it's not the players. It's the fact that this guy doesn't know how to line up a team. I would be a better manager than him. Jake on Football Manager would be a better manager than him. Christian would be a better manager than him. You, Max, would be a better manager than him. It's not that hard to see what needs to be done. And how this guy has a job, I don't know. I should apply. I'll send him my LinkedIn. Be like, I took Leighton Orient to the Prem in FIFA. That's what I'll say. And then boom. but moving on. The next game, let me get back to it, is Sweden versus Ukraine. What we got here, this is going to be an interesting matchup, to be honest. Both teams aren't really expected to go far. I'm going to start with you, Christian, this time. Who do you got winning this game?
Oof. I mean, both teams have looked – I'm going to lean towards Sweden. I think it's going to be a 1 or 2 goal game. I think it could really go either way. But I think, I can vividly remember how Sweden were against Spain. And Spain, we'll mention a little bit later, have been very, suspect, but still a very good team. And I think Sweden have looked they've looked very interesting, to say the least. I think Alexander Isak, who plays for Real Sociedad, had a very good season in Spain, has been great. I think, he's provided those moments where we've seen the ability for Sweden to score. You have Emil Forsberg, who's shown some quality as well. And, when we thought Zlatan Ibrahimovic was going to come, that was going to be an interesting prospect because he's looked good for a long this season. They didn't obviously have him. But, I think this Swedish team has enough to beat a team like Ukraine. I think Ukraine will be very reliant on the likes of Yarmolenko, Malinovsky, who's been great. And I think those guys can certainly impact the game. Zinchenko, who's played more as a midfielder. I think it's going to be a game where we have it honestly probably is one goal. I think neither team has scored a flurry of goals in this tournament, but both teams have shown the ability to score at times. I think you're just going to get that one moment from Alexander Isak, and I think he's going to be the player that impacts the game to the point where Sweden gets that 1-0 win. So I think it'll be close, but I'll edge the game towards Sweden.
Yeah, I think Sweden's the better team here. Ukraine have been just shaky. I mean, they haven't looked terrible, obviously. The fact they made it out of their group is a good thing. But I just think, both back lines are shaky. Both teams tactically are kind of a mess. But I'm going to take the quality of Sweden to take them forward and end up winning this game. I think Isak, like you mentioned, Christian, has been one of the better young players of the tournament, undoubtedly. People are linking him to bigger clubs for a good reason. He's been great. And obviously, Emil Forsberg has been Forsberg. He's been in pretty good form as of late, in pretty good goal-scoring form as of late. So I'm sure he's going to play a role. I'm just going to take Sweden because I think Sweden are the better team. I think they have more quality on the pitch. Both have pretty shaky back lines, but yeah, I think their quality will see them through.
Yeah, I think Sweden's going to win this. I think Isak has been very, very good this tournament. And, I mean, they're playing Ukraine, it's Ukraine. I mean, they're not really a powerhouse. So, I mean, this game, to me, it just seems like one of the weakest games on paper. Like, who's really going to be tuned in for? You go from England, Germany on Tuesday to Sweden, Ukraine. I feel like that's kind of a letdown. Maybe I'm wrong, but like just looking at it on paper, going from two teams with star power to Ukraine and Sweden. But yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 to Sweden, and then I for some reason I skipped Monday's game, so let's go back to there. And this is gonna be an interesting day: Croatia versus Spain. And I think I'm going with the upset here. But who do you guys got winning this game? Christian, we'll start with you.
I think you could certainly make a case for Croatia to win this game. I think Spain have been the most disappointing team of this tournament. I think in terms of the big powerhouse teams, I think they've been the most disappointing. And while I think, Spain are in trouble in terms of that number 9 position, which we talk about, Germany doesn't really have that out-and-out goal scorer. Alvaro Morata is another guy who just hasn't been able to do it. I don't love Croatia, though. I just don't think this team is enough to, push Spain. And it's certainly possible. I think, Joe, I think you're in perfect, right to make a prediction of an upset because Spain are the most disappointing team. I just don't know if Croatia has enough to make that upset happen Monday. But, I'm going to lean towards Spain in an edgy, 2-1 game. I think they have enough to get past Croatia. Now, when we talk about their next opponent, that's going to be a completely different story. But, Croatia aren't the same team they were at 2018. They were reliant on a guy like Mario Mandzukic up front. And, right now they don't have really a true number 9 that they can trust either. Rebic from Milan hasn't been great. They have other guys like Perisic, who they've been very reliant on. Modric obviously has been very good at this tournament. But they just don't have enough in the attack to really tell me they're going to be the team that upsets Spain. I think Spain have looked flat. They did score 5 goals in their last game in the group. I forget who it was against, but
Slovakia.
Right. And that's not a great team. I think, once again, is Morata going to start? I think, honestly, he should not. I think you should start Gerard Moreno, probably Ferran Torres, and maybe Dani Olmo, or a guy like Pablo Sarabia even. I think you need to take Morata out. His confidence is low, and there's no room for error this time. In the group games, you have the room to error because of the 3 teams coming out of the group. Now you don't. So if he comes out flat and he's not taking his chances, I think that could be the mistake. So I think if Morata starts, I actually would probably take Croatia. I'm just optimistic that Luis Enrique will start somebody else up at number 9, and I think they'll win 2-1, but I'm surely not confident. So, Joe, I completely understand taking an upset. I just think Spain has enough to get past Croatia.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Christian, and, I actually agree with the rationale that if Morata starts, I have to maybe lean Croatia, but he will start, so I'm going to lean Croatia because let's look at the group. This is a team that we had as a shoo-in to make it out of their group and win the group. They finished second in the group to Sweden. They couldn't even score a goal against that back line. That game against Poland, yeah, they scored, but they ended up not getting more than a point in that game. And Poland's not a very good team. They didn't even make it out of their group. Then the 5-0 came out of nowhere, but it's against Slovakia. So I'm supposed to sit there and be impressed by that? No. I think Spain might have the quality in general to possibly get through this game, but I'm going to take Croatia because I think Croatia comes in better form. I think that 3-1 win against Scotland was much more impressive, at least to me, than that 5-0 win against Slovakia for Spain. I think now that Modric has found his goal-scoring form again, that Croatian attack, especially Perisic, who's been kind of struggling to get a goal this tournament, he finally scored. Croatia may have a little bit more confidence, especially in the final third going into this game. And I think at the end of the day, even though I expect Spain to probably dominate possession here, because Croatia isn't really a side that likes to, take the ball and keep the ball for a while, as we've seen in this tournament. I think on the counter, if Perisic wants to score a goal, or even Modric wants to score a goal, I think they can, and I think they will, and I think they will win. And I just don't trust that. Say Croatia gets an early goal, I can't trust that Spain. I can't trust that Spain can go out and possibly equalize or even win this game. I just don't think they have the quality to do it. It's not the fault of their manager. It's the fault of that. It's the fault of Alvaro Morata gets the bulk of it for good reason because he has been shocking this tournament, to say the least. And just in general, they just look lackluster. Spain just doesn't look like Spain, to be honest with you guys. And I don't want to blame the manager because I think Luis Enrique is world class, but I don't know what's going on. I expect Croatia to win this game. It might be a tight one. I think Spain will definitely have the edge in possession, but I think Croatia will be more clinical in the final third, and I think that's what ultimately is going to have them win this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't Morata up front. That's not good. And I don't know if they're going to get the scoring. They did have the five goals against Slovakia, but again, like you said, Slovakia, they were overperforming. Prior to that, that was what we've been expecting of Slovakia all tournament. Croatia has Luka Modric, who's a great player. He can control the midfield. He's got a shot on him, as we saw against Scotland. I just can't see Spain winning this. I thought that team selection, leaving out Sergio Ramos and a few other guys, that was a problem, and I just don't think they win this game. I think clinically is going to be the difference maker in this game, and we all know that Croatia is the more clinical team. And before we wrap up, we got one more game here, and it is France versus Switzerland on Monday at 3:00. Who we got going to this game? I think we all have probably the same answer for this one, but Max, I'm going to start with you this time.
I got France easily winning this game, and that's no disrespect to Switzerland, but France are the best team in the world for a reason, and I think any one of those teams that would have made it out of the group of death or won the group of death, because we saw that Portugal was close to winning the group. Obviously, I think they would have manhandled Switzerland. I just don't think Switzerland could compete with any one of those titans. So I'm going to take France pretty easily.
Yeah, short and sweet. Switzerland have looked good, but not at the level of France. I mean, Xherdan Shaqiri's impacted the game at a very high rate, but I mean, their defense right now is, they're going to be very reliant on a guy like Manuel Akanji. And I just, he's been great for Dortmund, and Jan Sommer's great at the back. You could sing all the praises you want for Switzerland. France are the best team in the world. They're going to win 3-0. Simple as that.
Yeah. Switzerland, they have Shaqiri and Xhaka, and I do rate those two players. At least Xhaka I rate, surprisingly to some people, because everyone thinks he's trash. I think he's kind of good. But what are they going to do about Mbappe? What are they going to do about Benzema or Giroud? What are they going to do about
Antoine Griezmann?
What are
they the team is it's like a super team. I don't understand how they're going to. I'm just trying to think right now. What tactically how do you even set up tactically against this French team for Switzerland? I can
11 at the back.
Right? I can see you make.
Why you go to penalties?
You think? Hugo Lloris is a pretty good penalty stopper anyway. It's you can't win against this team. I mean, if it's an Italy, a Germany, or another team or Portugal, I could see how you could say this is how we lined up. This is our tactics to beat them. For Switzerland, though, like Mbappe will light you up if you try to counterattack on them. If you try to push up and allow them to counterattack. I generally don't know. Just pray, I guess. Right? And that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, you basically, I mean, honestly, it's get an early goal and sit back. That's from Switzerland's perspective, that's all you can do, and it still wouldn't work.
You got to look. If you're Switzerland, I think your best bet is rewatching that tape of that Hungary-France game and hoping that France end up being as wasteful in front of goal as they were in that game, and hope that you can get an early goal and hopefully hold that lead and maybe take it into extra time. But I just seriously doubt it's going to happen. Now that Benzema's in goal scoring form, that's like the final infinity stone on the gauntlet, right? I mean, the fact that Benzema now is in goal scoring form, I mean, it's going to be really tough to beat these guys, and I don't think Switzerland's the team to do it. So,
all right. Well, I guess we're all in agreement there. France is going on. When will they stop? Find out on the next episode of the TWSN Soccer Sitdown show. For Joe Cameron, Max Romero, and Christian DeBlock, we'll catch you next week.